The world won't understand you. Hey, but it's okay. Said the world won't understand you, 'cause I made you in my own way. Said the world won't understand you. Life may move fast, or it may move slow. I met a silly man who said he make it slow. We look up out towards space, or even at the sky. One that pass away, but never look inside. Breathe in, breathe out. Life is a maze, but we'll figure this out. I mean, human beings, I ain't got no doubt.
Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome to episode 53 of In a Good Way podcast. Today's very special guest is Julia Rebecca Ramos. She's a surfing instructor. She also does tarot readings, and she has a shop where she sells jewelry. Although right now, I guess it's on a little bit of a hiatus, and she'll be opening again soon. So welcome, Julia. I'm very honored to have you here.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. We did it.
Absolutely. Oh, well, let me ask you about that, right? Because I've faced that a few times, with my podcast. Like when things like that happen, where there's weird things, right? Like, how do you feel about those kind of things? You feel like, obviously everything happens for a reason, right? Like there's little thing. Yeah, right? Like, because...
Yeah, I mean...
Go ahead.
I do pay attention to astrology. I try not to let it control my life, right? But I think that there's merit in astrology. And, we just came out of a pretty heavy Mercury retrograde, and Mercury retrogrades do affect communication, technology, transportation, travel. And this particular Mercury retrograde hit me personally very hard. I missed planes. I bought a bad car. I mean, my phone got turned off, and I don't know, I have like problems with keeping track of days. Apparently I thought Wednesday was Tuesday. So, I mean, just blame it on Mercury retrograde. Even though it's over, there's a shadow period 2 weeks after every Mercury retrograde. And, I thought I was in the clear on the 17th, but it's still doing its thing. And, I'm just respecting it and learning the lessons.
No, you're absolutely right, because I forgot about that too. And there was a lot of miscommunication with this Mercury retrograde for me as well. So there was a lot of things happening, and every once in a while I'd remember like, oh, it's that Mercury retrograde. But I think usually it's not that heavy. Was there a reason why it was that heavy? Because I had so many things happen too. Were there like other planets or other alignments or things why it would have been so heavy this time?
Yeah, I mean, in the past few weeks, I haven't really done my reading and research, but we also had a Venus retrograde in Leo that particularly was powerful for me, because it's my Venus return. My Venus is in Leo, so that retrograde affected me greatly. I got divorced, I ended up with someone else, like big life-changing things. This is Venus. Venus is the planet of relationships, of, like not only romantic relationships, but romantic relationships is a big part of Venus, finances. So we had the Venus retrograde, which is over now, but the Mercury retrograde. And then we had a whole bunch of other, I think it was like 6 other planets in retrograde. Wow. So it was like a wallop of a retrograde. There was just a lot of slow down energy, a lot of like difficulties that came through that astrology.
Wow. And how long was Venus in retrograde?
What's that?
How long was Venus in retrograde? Do you know? Or
oh, I don't really remember. I mean, I'd have to again just go back and read. I think it was a few weeks.
Oh.
It's not a quick thing. It's something that lasted a pretty long time. I don't have the dates at the top of my head, but yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, no, well, I guess I wanted to find out about your story, because you're someone that's very, very tapped in, and you have also a very interesting story. I love I saw an interview of you where you were talking about your journey into surfing, right? And how it was something you wouldn't have expected to end up doing, and the spiritual connection with that as well. So I guess if you don't mind starting with, when did you first kind of gravitate towards anything spiritual, like any memories you have from when you were little leading up to, I guess, currently?
Okay, here, this is what just popped into my head.
Okay.
Memories from childhood as far as spiritual experiences.
Yes.
Okay. So I did have something in mind. I'm actually going to backtrack a little more. So when I was a child, I was raised in very Latino churches.
Mhm.
I was raised primarily in a Baptist church called Iglesia del Valle, or Iglesia Bautista del Valle. And that was a very nice community. I can't say that it enriched me spiritually, but it enriched me culturally very much so. You know, just being in like a Latin enclave in New York and being exposed to Spanish as much as I was, and kind of just being part of that community. So eventually, you know, we kind of bounced back and forth. My dad's mom was a Pentecostal pastora.
Oh.
So we would go to her church, and that would be nutty because we would have lots of exposure to spiritual practices that are less conservative, in the sense of, you know, speaking in tongues, dancing in the spirit, getting slain in the spirit, and stuff like that. And I mean, it never really was something that I participated in. You know, I was always like a spectator at the age that I was at, you know, so that was kind of like the early days of my exposure to spirituality. And, you know, I always had somewhat of a, I want to say like a predilection, or I just felt like a natural lean towards more nature-based practices, not necessarily rejecting the church. You know, of course, we all know the church has its corruptions and stuff like that, but just finding my own way, you know. I really have always had a passion for plant medicines, herbalism. I've recently just kind of felt a little more tapped into, you know, trees and things like that. So I'm really still on a path of self-discovery. But as far as like my childhood, you know, that was like the beginning, the base. So yeah, so that was like the early days of my, you know, exposure to religion, spirituality, Christianity, things like that. And now you know, I'm just definitely more open to different things. For example, backtracking to when I was a kid, being in that environment and having, I think, so much like fear placed in you of doing the wrong thing or not doing the right thing, or being in a life of sin, or that sin is like, you know, this thing that you just can't get away from. Or, you know, there's also sometimes a lot of emphasis put on, you know, the devil, or, you know, don't let the enemy get at you, and blah, 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 stuff like that. I'm not saying that I don't believe in the devil. I mean, I know there's plenty of people who don't, you know. I'm just saying that it kind of did a number on me, to be honest with you, as a child, because I remember, you know, my father, he's, you know, raised in a very strict Pentecostal environment, but I remember him being very much into music. He was a drum player. So being into music, he had varied eclectic tastes. So as a child, he would turn on music like, you know, this was like the early 80s, Sting, Hiroshima, or is it, oh no, is that the name? I don't know. It was like a Japanese fusion, like pop band. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, there was the new wave, this new age musician named Andres Volker or something like that. Some European guy who did like new age music. And I remember one night, I think I had fallen asleep listening to this music, right? And I woke up as a child, looked down at my floor. I had a calculator next to my bed, and there was a 666 on the calculator. And I vividly remember screaming like, ah! Because I really thought that I was getting like attacked by the devil. And meanwhile, it was just like whatever. The calculator had a 666. Maybe it was an angel number. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was, So I had all of this stuff in my head as a child, kind of whirling around. And I feel like as an adult, it's up to me to just like organize it, and kind of sort out what is really pertinent to my existence and what isn't,
Yeah. So did you feel, who put it on the calculator? Like why was it there? Like, do you know, or?
I don't know. I mean, I used to also like look at, as a child, I would look at grains of wood, like wood grain, and find what's it called, like faces in the wood grain, and kind of freak myself out with that. Because I really thought that they were like, demons in the wood or something. And now as an adult, I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe there are spirits in wood, but maybe they're not bad. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's not like, such a horrible thing. Like, just accept it. Accept that you see faces in wood grain, and so does a lot of other people. And, it's not necessarily the most awful, evil thing that could happen, or the number 666 is not necessarily the most awful, number to cross the planet Earth. And now it's like with a little more education, we see that, we have angel numbers in, our consciousness and our understanding now. Anybody who's interested in spirituality knows about angel numbers, and you can go anywhere and read up the different meaning of angel numbers. And it's more of like a widely accepted kind of guidance, So I think like for me as a child, I just had a lot of fear placed into me through the church, and I think that it is very counterproductive to spiritual development, because it lacks authenticity in a sense. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're just kind of taught to like, this is black, this is white, this is good, this is bad. And you lose the opportunity to kind of think critically as a child about spiritual things. I think it's important to guide kids into understanding their own spiritual truth through interaction with the world around them, nature, other people, life experiences, stuff like that. Yeah, well, you know what? It's just, I think it's just a need for each individual to interpret their spiritual experiences, I think, for themselves. You know what I'm saying? And not necessarily just take what is given to you as truth. I think that is, for me, the point,
Yeah, absolutely. No, but that was my first reference too. When I started learning, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have nobody. These crazy things were happening to me. So I didn't know. I was like, oh, I think I was watching those preachers on TV. And then one of them was like, but don't take my word for it. Read the Bible for yourself. So I was like, okay, like, all right, let me do that. And then once I read it, it didn't go in line with what I saw people teaching. So I did. I was like, oh, this is my little guidebook. So I did actually. So I won't bash it in that way. But then, like how you said, organized religion, I steered away from that. And then I found my path. So we'll just, just to not keep babbling on about that. But so once you kind of gravitated away from the religion, like how did you? I don't want to fast forward too much, but how did you get into like surfing and all that? Because like how you said, you're now a surfing instructor, and I know you have a whole story with that. So
yeah, I spent, a lot of, I guess, let me put it this way. I have a whole life behind me, right? I was married for 15 years. I have 2 kids. I homeschooled them for most of their life. Before that, I was a school teacher. I went to school for fine arts first, and then I went for my special education. I worked as a teacher for 4 years. Then I left the workforce to homeschool my kids. And I did that for a long time. And during that time, I picked up first horseback riding for about 3 years.
Wow.
And I looking for physical outlet because I was beginning to realize that I had a need for exercise to help me manage anxiety, depression, things like that. And so I went with horseback riding and I became obsessed and probably delusional because I probably thought I was like, I'm going to become this amazing horseback rider. And I mean, I enjoyed it. But then at a certain point, I was like, maybe this is not the sport for me. It's expensive. I've fallen off the horse a few times.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. And then I just ended up one day having this experience. I was at the local beach in New York with my kids, and I was boogie boarding with them, and all of a sudden I just kind of like heard this voice, not a real audible voice, but it was like this knowing, this kind of just like message download, right? That's what we call it now, a download. All right. So it was a download. At that time I didn't know that I was getting downloaded, but I got downloaded, and it was like, why are you riding horses when you could be riding waves?
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And then it was like, horses are expensive. They need a lot of care. They need vet care, farrier care, training, boarding, all of this stuff. Waves are free, and you can ride waves. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe that's cool. Yeah. And then I think it was like, a little later on, I saw something like a painting called Neptune's Horses. And I was like, oh, the waves are kind of like horses, like Neptune's horses. It was a painting of the ocean waves cresting, but the white water was in the form of horses. So like a little cheesy, but all right. But it spoke to me.
Hey, no. I'm familiar with Neptune's horses, so that's pretty.
Yeah. So then I was like, all right. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to take some surf lessons. So I went ahead and I did that. And I ended up being really bad at it, actually. I was really bad at surfing. But I just kept going and kept taking lessons. And eventually I ended up going to like a more formal surf school. And I just kept doing it until I got good at it. And then I just ended up loving it. And within that, 5-year window of time that I started surfing till now, I ended up moving towards the coast on Long Island. So I actually lived for a few years in a beach house on the South Shore of Long Island, and that gave me unlimited access to the ocean.
Wow.
And I was in a surf community that, I'm no longer a part of, but that's where I have my roots. And I actually ended up just kind of, no pun intended, riding that wave all the way to Costa Rica. So here I am now as the surf instructor.
Had your whole family moved when you moved to Long Island? Your whole family moved with you, or?
Yes, we all lived at the beach. Yes. And I had my kids and surf camps and stuff like that. They really haven't taken to it, but it's just widely known and accepted. You just don't force your kids to surf. Just don't force them, like if they want to do it, they do it. If not, that's it.
So I'm curious, I know it probably doesn't have anything to do with it, but I'm curious, like, what sign are you?
Me. Okay. So I'm a Virgo, Scorpio rising. So yeah, Virgo, Scorpio rising, Venus and Leo. I'm a Virgo stellium and I'm a Scorpio stellium. So I have like more than 3 placements of Virgo. I have 3 at least placements of Scorpio. And it's funny because I always refer to myself as a mermaid. It's like a joke, but actually my astrology is very balanced between water and land. So it's like
Mhm.
I kind of have that, water and earth, you know.
Yeah, that's why I was
Um,
curious. I was like wondering if you had a lot of water placements, if that's something that was already in you, it was just a matter of time or something.
for sure it was. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because as I got more into surfing, I really got more into astrology, and it
Mhm.
was just a tool to help me get to know myself. Like, yes, I know I'm a Virgo. I am very Virgoan. I am super like, you know, I'm a neat freak, a little bit of a control freak and a detail oriented, but I'm also very good, I think, at times going with the flow. And I have a lot of like scorpionic kind of aspects to my personality also, just I feel like in my life I am constantly going through transformation, you know what I mean? It's
Ah,
not necessarily, life for me is not about stability, it's about transformation, discovery. Um, you know, and then I found my home in the ocean. I love the ocean. The ocean just, it is the best medicine. I feel I am the best version of myself when I'm happy in the ocean, in the salt water. Um,
okay,
yeah.
so we're gonna talk about what led you to Costa Rica.
Okay. So this is the real story. True stories, true story. I don't know if you ever used to watch The Real World on MTV.
Oh, when the like first season, I think that's the only one I saw.
Yeah, and I know the intro always had that true story.
So that's it? I don't
this is
remember.
this is the true story of what brought me to Costa Rica. So, um I was on a vacation with my family, my husband and my kids in Puerto Rico.
Oh.
We ended up coming back, and my husband had a business trip
Mm.
directly after. So he went off on his business trip. I was home just recouping from the vacation with my kids. And came to find out that he was, flirting and having like this, you know, I don't know, free time as he was out on this business trip. And I ended up just kind of learning a lot of things that did not fall well on my heart, my ears, my mind, my soul. We had a very difficult marriage to begin with, and a lot of obstacles, a lot of things that really made the marriage very difficult. So when he came back from his business trip, I was like, I am aware of, how you've been carrying on, and it makes me feel very bad. And my solution was my friends invited me on a trip to Costa Rica. So I was like, all right, let's go, girls. It was like just a nice kind of like two girls that, they were like a casual couple, and they invited me to go along with them. And I was like, yeah, let's party, girls week out or whatever. I need to, just get away from this sadness that I'm feeling. So here we are having, a good old time, a fun time, just enjoying ourselves, being silly, vacationing. And at the end of the vacation trip, I met my current partner, and we just kept a long distance relationship. And I very early on in the process, once I realized that I was developing feelings for him, I, told my husband, who had already kind of, been unfaithful in his own way and whatnot. I was like, listen, we need to get divorced because we are not living the truth of partnership. I had presented to him the thought of possibly like, having an open marriage. No, he didn't want that, but it's unfortunately, what's good for the goose is not good for the gander, I guess you should say. There was an imbalance there. I mean, I would have been open, honestly. I would have been open to a polyamorous situation. Now I'm not, because, you know, my partner that I'm with is very monogamous and I'm okay with that. And I don't need polyamory. I would have been open to it to save the marriage and to have things be fair, but I just couldn't be in such an unfair situation. So anyway, you know, it started out as an amicable divorce, and we were very respectful and still very kind and supportive of each other. But, you know, I think as the process went on and he realized the reality of what divorce truly is, it became something that disturbed him personally, and he became very nasty and came at me legally, you know, and then it got dragged into court. And believe it or not, I was able to still work with him. I got a very good lawyer, and we had a sit down meeting, and we came to an agreement that I would be able to relocate internationally under certain, you know, terms of a stipulation that we ended up having drafted. And, you know, I ended up achieving the goal of being able to relocate internationally with my children to begin a new life with a different partner. And really what I'm seeking is just a more honest relationship. It's not so much about anything but that. I feel like honesty, it's actually a very Virgoan thing to require like extreme honesty. You know what I mean? But that's a huge point for me in relationships, is like, no, like we need to be honest with each other. You know, if we're not being honest, then we're not doing it, you know? So that's pretty much what happened. I ended up just getting divorced and working hard to get here because I, you know, just decided to take a different road. You know, I just did an about face and said, hey, you know what? I don't want to live in dishonesty anymore. And that's what happened.
Oh, that's a good enough reason, I think. Like, well, honesty.
And then
yeah.
well, I was just gonna say, then I had my dream of working as a surf instructor, which was a, you know, added bonus that I can do it here. You know, I can pursue that. I can pursue learning how to be a better surf instructor. Like just today, the lesson I did this morning, I did a lesson with 3 kids. It was myself, my partner, and one of his family members in the water, and we were all just working together. And his family member, I guess he's like a cousin, was giving me pointers, you know, on how to push, you know, the student into the wave in a better direction, how to give better instruction. And, you know, it's not easy. I think for me, I'm an adult. I'm 43 years old. You know, it's not easy to start over at this point and take pointers and tips, and your ego's big, and it's not easy to be told things. But I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here and be able to learn and practice and fully live out my career dream, which is to work and surf, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing. So why was it less, there was just not that many opportunities to be a surf instructor back, or like in the US, or?
Well, in New York where I lived, it would be seasonal. I mean, it's seasonal here too, but you have more opportunity here. I think it's this where I am now. I'm in Santa Cruz, which is Guanacaste, which is very close to Tamarindo. Tamarindo is a huge surf mecca. If you want to learn how to surf, you come to Tamarindo.
Wow.
If you want good waves, you can come to the Guanacaste region. There are tons of beaches with excellent waves. Surf is an industry here.
Wow.
You know, I mean, back in New York, sure, there are surf shops and surf schools. But I feel like the market is kind of like on lock in New York. Like it's kind of hard to break into in New York. Here, there's just so much demand that you really can just come and start. And, you know, once we get into the high tourist season, which is like starting late November, December, then it really picks up after the holidays. I mean, you're working, you have a lot of opportunity to give surf lessons to tourists. That's the bottom line,
Yeah. No, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, and how is the cost of living over there? It's obviously better than in the US. Right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the house I'm in now, I'm renting it for a super low price. I mean, I am having to do a lot of work on it, it's true, but I mean, it's still a really nice house and it's great. Yeah, the cost of living, even the cost of, like, I mean, I've had people come in to do work, and I'm very grateful for, all the support that my partner has given me and plugging me into his community. And I mean, they work and they do excellent work, the locals of Costa Rica, and it's very affordable, and it makes it possible for me to be here because I'm not rich. I don't have tons of money. I'm doing what I can do with what I have. And, I'm able to really do the things that I want to do, like in this house, or even with a pain in the butt car. It's like I can still get it done because the cost of living is cheaper here,
Yeah.
So,
you had told me, I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to. Do you want to talk about the house and the history behind it?
oh yeah, sure.
Because I know.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
no, it's just, it's such a great house. It's got so much potential. It fell into disrepair. The family who originally built it divorced because unfortunately the wife, as I said, chose a life of dereliction, and she decided to become a working woman and then, prostitute. So she used the house for her work. And there were other things that went on here. I'm sure, just a lot of unsavory activities, possibly even a murder is what I've heard, not been confirmed. But, we've had some like uncomfortable situations here, I for me personally, now my partner, when he first moved in, he said he had salt on the counter and it totally disappeared. And he was like, oh, like totally taken aback, like who took it? And then it appeared, something like that, like it materialized, that was his first experience. He's had other experiences where he's felt like, that gust of wind go by him or feel like a presence or feel like he's being watched. He's stuff like that. For me, it was a little more concrete. Last week, one night I was sleeping here, I have my dog with me. He's my service animal, but I also believe that he's got a spiritual role to play in my life. I do see him very much as a spiritual protector. I do believe that our pets have real jobs to do in our lives. So back in New York, he always slept in a crate. Here, like I said, I'm in a little bit of upheaval, so he doesn't spend every night in the crate. But that particular night, I had put him in a crate, laid down to go to bed, and we have a little sensor light out here that all night long was going on and off, on and off, on and off, on, off, on and off, all night, non-stop. I mean, could we argue, was it a leaf? Was it something else? It was non-stop, and it had never happened before. That was the first night that I had put my dog Scrapple in the crate. And I'm just saying, if there is an entity that, or an energy residue that is, in this house, he respects that dog. You know what I'm saying? Like he respects that dog. Yeah. That dog is a presence and he demands respect. He's a Dutch Shepherd. He's really cool. He's super smart. So now it's like we've been leaving him out of the crate and we haven't had that issue happen again. As I mentioned earlier when we were just chatting, my partner and I went to go buy a car that was a few hours away. It ended up being a negative situation. We kind of got scammed. The car broke down, couldn't even get it home. We ended up having to leave it at a mechanic and eventually towing it home. And it's still sitting out there waiting for a new motor. So it was a negative situation. We were with our kids. he had his kids with him, I had my kids, and we were just kind of like out there with this crapped out car. It was a very negative experience. We got home and I put an evil eye amulet over the door, like I said, out of the reach of any critter, creature, totally protected under the awning, and really very small chance that it would break. But when we got back from that negative car buying experience, that eye was broken. And it is said, and I do believe, that when your evil eye breaks, that means it did its job. Like something happened, it worked, it needs to be replaced. That's what it is. So, and as I said, in the situation we were in, thankfully, we all got home happy, safe, alive, all in one piece. Could have been worse. So I'm grateful for, I mean, the protection is, I don't believe it's in the amulet itself. It's in the intention and the belief that we place in the vision. Like when we see this, all right, I'm putting this evil eye amulet on my door with the intention and the, petition and prayer that this will protect my home and my family from any mal de ojo, evil eye, jealousy, bad intentions, whatever. We were freaked out when we saw it broken, and it needs to be replaced. It's still kind of like we're still in it, like we're still looking at it like, why did it break? Why did it break? We know why it broke. It's just and then we have one day we were just chilling in the living room, and we have a mattress kind of leaning up against the wall with some pillows and blankets that are pretty securely up there. And it was really like somebody took a pile of the blankets and just threw it on my partner's head.
Wow.
Like it really looked like that. It really wasn't like there was nothing going on that made it seem that, okay, maybe like, was anybody bouncing the bed? Was anybody like, was it like the blankets were hanging off the edge? No, it was like something pushed those blankets right on top of his head. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then we're constantly, we are in a state of disorganization. I will not deny that. We're still like very much getting settled into the home. But just, when you're getting ready to leave and that thing you need, you just can't find it, or you can't find the keys. And it's like, oh my God, where is this? We're running late, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden they're right there. Like things are going missing, stuff like that. And then just like, basically, I know for myself and for my partner as well, we're very like sensitive to energy. He, believes in the spiritual world just as much as I do. And, we feel a little discomfort, like there's times where it's like, everybody's happy, everybody's good, everything's going great. You walk into the house and boom, like something just falls on you, and it's like uncomfortable. It's dark. It's just like a negative energy. So considering knowing the past of the house, and things that we've experienced just energetically and physically also, we both really want to do like a limpieza. We want to clean the house. I was just cleaning the house before I started chatting with you, because I wanted to really like, do like a salt sweep and, like take out, I have Palo Santo, just any kind of like herb or incense. It doesn't have to be Palo Santo. I don't recommend that spiritual practitioners even buy Palo Santo because of the way that it's harvested and marketed. It's, but I have it and it's useful and it is powerful. So if you have it, use it. You know what I'm saying? But basically, your intention and your action is what cleanses your environment, right? You can anoint the doors, windows, and passageways. You can do a salt sweep. You can do a smoke cleanse. There's just so many different ways to cleanse a house. So we're really beginning to see that it needs to be done. We've been saying it and dragging our feet. And also just the practical nature of life is kind of like keeping us busy. car buying, taking the kids to school, work, figuring things out, cooking dinners. It's like full force, like, you know, kind of like everyday people things. But sometimes you got to just stop and be like, all right, let's talk about the spiritual aspect that's affecting us. You know, we need to really address this.
No, absolutely. And
You know,
no, yeah, absolutely. And have you ever seen spirits and all that, like in your whole journey? Like you see spirits or?
it's funny. I actually don't see spirits. I have family members who do. My mom has seen spirits. My aunt constantly seeing spirits. I've even been in a situation with 3 friends. We were in a kind of like Airbnb. Um, and well, it turns out that one of the women that we're staying with, this was on a native like water trip. She's an elder, like a very experienced, how should I say this? I wouldn't necessarily call her a shaman, but she is an experienced spiritual practitioner of, basically the spirituality that is native to her land. She's a really amazing person. And she is someone who is adept in astral traveling. So this particular woman was sleeping in her bedroom. We were up smoking weed, playing cards, hanging out. I mean, just like hanging out, having a good time, vacation things. And all of a sudden, all 3 of the other people that I was with just literally turned white as a ghost and were like, oh my God, did you just see that? What was that? And I'm like, I didn't see anything. Because I don't see things. I don't see things. I see with my mind's eye. I get downloads. I'm clairaudience, clairsentient. I don't see spirits. I've not been given that gift. And I'm grateful because, to be honest with you, I think it would freak me out. I just don't want to see either. Like I don't want to see. They saw and they were like, oh, and it was like, oh, everybody got up. We got the sage. We started burning the sage. We prayed. We cleansed each other. We cleansed the room. One of the friends that I was with, her tribe's tradition is to smoke tobacco for, cleansing purposes. She's not a smoker. This is something that was just done for, spiritual purposes. So we did that. And the next day we told our guide, our leader, one of the adults that was with us, and she was like, oh, yeah, that was me. I astral traveled last night. You probably just saw my spirit body because I for sure was very aware of the fact that I, did that. And then all the other friends were like, oh my gosh. But it's so funny because she, yeah, like I totally believe her. She also shared some information because at that point in my life, I was just starting to re-enter the world of travel through Native Like Water, that organization. And, she was like, when you travel, your spirit stays in the place that you were at for a little while before you totally arrive home, part of you stays where you were, part of you goes home, and eventually it all comes together, So I believe in your spirit body kind of like leaving energetic residue in certain places, where you go and you travel and you kind of make meaning and you meet people and make relationships and,
Absolutely.
So yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's pretty interesting. Like I know I do that, like the astral traveling. But I never thought like, oh, if other people see you, like that's pretty interesting.
I never thought or realized it either. It never even crossed my mind until that experience. In fact, to be honest with you, at that point, I never even considered astral travel. It was like not even a thing in my mind. That was like an experience where I was like, oh, well, everybody saw it. Like,
yeah.
They're not crazy. If anything, I'm the one who like, I didn't see it, like, and then it was confirmed. you know, so I'm like, well, there it is. It's
Yeah,
real.
yeah. No, absolutely. And real quick, like I know you mentioned like you do believe in like the dark entities and all that, because I don't get to talk about that with everybody because a lot of people don't want to talk about that, I think. Or but you know, like you have experience. If you believe in it, well, obviously you've experienced it, right? Like, is there any certain experiences that stand out? I mean, aside from the house thing, because even that might make you feel like, okay, obviously there's something. Do you want to share any of those experiences? Or?
Yeah, no, I mean, dark entities for sure. I mean, I think that I'm, how can I put this? How can I put this? In extreme ways, have I ever experienced like or witnessed possession? No, you know, exorcism, I believe it happens. Have I experienced it? Have I seen it? No. Am I sensitive to feeling the presence of entities around me? Sure. Do I really believe that if you pray for angels to protect you on all sides that it happens? Absolutely. You know, I mean, even in, it's so funny because the most mundane things can really speak to you about spirituality. I know, like when I was in my old house, which was a very old house that was built in 1912 and also had a lot of history, we would have the same kind of like electrical disturbances, not so much lights going on and off, but like, light bulbs that are kind of reaching the end of their life and they kind of flicker. And I remember one day it was really bothering my son. It was causing him a lot of fear and panic to the point he didn't even want to enter his room.
Wow.
And there were times where he would tell me, oh, mommy, when I close my eyes I see like this black ball with red eyes. And like, I mean, this is typical kid stuff. Kids have nightmares, it's not abnormal. But my antenna is always like, okay. And like I said, I'm not a church basher. I believe in God. I do use the name of Jesus absolutely when I'm dealing with what I feel is like a dark entity. Anything that produces fear, I feel is dark, like, I mean, dark in a negative sense, because we have our own darkness that we should all be exploring and working with. Absolutely, 100%. But I'm talking about outside dark, low vibrational entities, so yeah, this particular presence was freaking my son out. And him being young, not really knowing how to deal with it. I mean, I just reverted to what I learned as a kid. In the name of Jesus, by the blood of Jesus, leave us alone. And that light stopped flickering and started working and kept working and never went back to the flicker again.
Wow.
So, I mean, to me, it's like, and then I also remember when I was a little kid, right? I did see Poltergeist. I don't know. Most kids, I think, did. But
yeah,
it was based in a real story, and a lot of used to kind of mess with us.
it was breaking up right when you started talking about the poltergeist. It started, so I don't know. I guess I missed starting from poltergeist. If you want to repeat what you were gonna say.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying that that entities have access to energy. Right? So electricity is energy. So that is one way that they do tend to manifest. I mean, if you don't have to see a spirit or a ghost or an entity or whatever with your eyes all the time. Definitely you can feel the presence. You can also see the manifestations that are around you. And a lot of the time, it for me anyway, it does manifest electrically. So there's that. And then, myself being a self-proclaimed witch, I don't see a witch as a bad thing. I think it's a very beautiful thing to be a witch. I follow this one lady. My son sat right in front of me. He's so funny because when I was in New York, I would listen to her all the time while I was washing my dishes. And she's got her own YouTube channel, Ginny Matherall. Ginny Matherall. Yes, Sammy is groaning because he's like, not Ginny. She's like this little English lady, a 4th generation witch practicing the old ways, but her specialty is actually is working with demons, like cleansing, you know, like ridding places of
Oh,
demonic entities. So that's what she does, you know. And I respect that work a lot, you know, not necessarily something that I want to partake in, but there's a need for it. And it's not always, like I said, in the capsule of the church. You know, I mean, there is a universal grace given to every person on earth. And I really believe that if you choose a path, you know, that path is the path that will be used for your highest good. And for this particular lady who I see as a very interesting and educational fount of information, you know, she's a fourth generation witch and she practices, you know, exorcisms.
wow.
So I mean, you know, as far as my own personal experiences, no, thank God I'm protected from anything that's too deep, you know, in that way, because I don't really feel called to that. But there are people who are, you know.
Absolutely.
Anyway, and then, you know, yeah, in your everyday life, in the most mundane things, little things that maybe cause you trouble, if it's losing things at the last minute, losing your keys, electric disturbances, just, you know, kids are sensitive. If your kids tell you that they're scared and they feel uncomfortable going into a particular room or into a particular space or whatever, it's like you can absolutely work against whatever negative entities are present in whatever way you want to. You know, I mean, for me, it's like I use the name of Jesus. That's how I was raised and I believe in it. And that's what I do, you know. So, you know, and like I said, I'm still getting set up here, but when I was more settled in New York, I had wards in my house. You know, I had my own personal altar. I just started doing candle work here. You know, it's just a way of centering your energy and placing your intention where you want it to go, you know, because I really believe that that's the key, you know. It's like, and I'm learning it firsthand, like any manifestation you want to bring about. And it doesn't have to be, oh, I want to manifest, you know, living in a dream house and wherever, or do this. It's like, if you want to manifest a spiritually clean environment, then you got to do the work, you know,
Absolutely.
however that comes to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I don't want to keep you forever, but if you can briefly about like I know you said you were able to spend time with different indigenous tribes or different people. Like I know you went to the Amazon. If you want to talk briefly about what led you to that, like how you were able to do that, because to me that's amazing. It's something I would love to do for sure.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's actually, that's a really cool story because so initially I went to the Amazon. I was fresh out of college, like in my very early 20s. And I went with a mission group from a church that I was affiliated with. So I was still at that point very much like affiliated with the church, even though I was kind of like in my own way, kind of like, I don't know how to say it, like apartiendo, like just stepping aside and finding my own way. But that's a long process, I think, for someone who is raised in church, you know. So, but I was still very much involved, and I went on this mission trip because I just really wanted to go see these indigenous tribes in the Amazon. And so I went and did that. We went to Brazil and we got to meet members of the Suruaha tribe, and we learned a lot about their culture. And we learned about how the missionaries work in those environments. And that's a very controversial topic, of course. I mean, you know, there's people who believe that there should be no missionaries. There's people who are all for it. I mean, you know, I think that there are pros and cons to everything, you know. The missionaries that we were working with were actually very open to not allowing, but to embracing the spiritual practices. See, I find when I speak, sometimes I have a lot of colonial residue. I can't even speak. I have a lot of colonial residue in my mind, the way that I speak, like, oh, the missionaries allowed them to practice their spirituality. No, they didn't allow it. They didn't interrupt it. You know what I mean? Like, they respected it. They didn't walk in with a desire to kind of like take it away. They learned about what was actually happening spiritually. And I remember that, one of the ladies, one of the missionaries was educating the group that I was with. And she was like, we go and we spend time, they invite us to be part of their spiritual ceremonies. So we go into, their spiritual space and, they partake of their medicine, whatever kind of snuff. It's like a hallucinogenic snuff. I don't know exactly what it is, but that's what, this is very typical in, South and Central American indigenous spiritual practice. So, that snuff was taken and then, the drumming and dancing begins and, they start to commune with spirits. And I respected the missionary stance in this particular instance in which they said, we don't interrupt because we don't know who they're talking to. They could be talking to angels. They could be talking to spirit guides. They could be talking to God. They could be talking to demons. We don't know who they're talking to. So we just watch. We observe. And I found that to be a more modern approach to, the idea is not necessarily conversion in this kind of mission. It's more like, let us help you enrich your existence without subtracting from your culture and who you are, So, yeah, while I was there, we did a dental clinic, and we provided dental work to people in the community who needed help. We learned about a lot of more radical practices that the tribe partook in, such as like infanticide. If a child was born with obvious defects, they would not be supported in the tribe and they would be seen as a subtractive element. So that was back then. I believe that's kind of been in the process of changing. This was like 20 years ago now, but infanticide, also, I'm trying to think what else. There were just a lot of practices, that were kind of just like, for us would be like shocking, but for them it had function. You know what I'm saying? It was about survival, group survival of the fittest, survival of the tribe. So I think that, the missionaries were kind of trying to not necessarily subtract from their culture, but also try to prevent these things like group suicides or infanticides or I forget what the word is, but when elderly people are basically unalived, because they're a burden on the community. Like these are practices that were happening there, and it's important to go into this education, understanding, and knowledge without judgment, because everything has its purpose. They don't see themselves as doing bad or doing wrong. It's sacrifice, you know what I mean? But of course, if there's a better way that doesn't involve the loss of life, then that's where things start to get, we live in the world. We can't all be isolated all the time. As much as we want to preserve the rawness of the tribal experience, it's like, well, the world is encroaching. You know what I mean? Like you can't stay in a cell in the jungle forever, unfortunately. Even if you want to, even if it's the best possible thing, it's colonialism. It happens. It's awful. It's rough. But it's almost like I don't want to say necessary. It's like an unavoidable thing on Earth. You know what I'm saying? That's really what I feel like, because we're here to battle. We're not here to just sit around and, look at the stars, even though that's beautiful. And we all have those moments. But I just think, I don't know. I just feel like it's all about finding balance, So, but anyway, getting back into the indigenous culture, that was a very eye-opening experience. And I did not want to leave Brazil. I loved it. And in that moment, over 20 years ago, I knew, I was like, I want to live abroad, somewhere tropical. This is what feels like home to me. I feel comfortable. I wake up early in the morning. I feel happy. I feel energized. Like I'm not a New York native. I'm a Puerto Rico native. My, blood wants jungle, you know? So anyway, and here I am.
Yeah, that's
So
beautiful. So were you born in Puerto Rico or you were born in New York?
I was born in New York.
Oh, okay.
I was born in New York, yeah. And my mother was born in New York.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure she was born in New York. Yeah. So I'm like second generation New Yorican, Puerto Rican, Boricua, New Yorican. So yeah, I mean, but I do believe that.
No, go ahead, go.
I was just saying, I believe that we carry particular environments in our blood. I do believe that, no matter where you're from, everyone is indigenous to somewhere. So if you are indigenous to a land, that DNA is in you, you know what I mean? And you have that desire, if you're tapped into it, to kind of like, yeah, go home, or seek somewhere that feels like what home is, or was for you.
Absolutely. And who told you, because like how you mentioned that you're Taino, right? So who told you? Did your mom teach you that, or like did you?
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, okay, so here, this is basically what it is. Wasn't necessarily my mom directly, but as a little girl, I would go to Puerto Rico with my family often. And my grandmother would take us to Las Cuevas, and there's also just like Taino museums and artifacts that are all kind of like strewn throughout Puerto Rico. It's a small island, so you just drive 2 hours and you're there, in this amazing whatever ball field, whatever, campo de pelota. And then you see all the hieroglyphics and you see like everything, all the artifacts and stuff like that. And yeah, I was just exposed to that indigeneity from very young, that part of my culture from very young. And I think that I remember particularly loving, yeah, but I was exposed to that culture, that indigeneity as a little girl. And it's funny because the Tainos we're not a recognized tribe. You don't have the advantages or even the organization that other tribes have in North America. It's just like pretty much a grassroots thing, it's like, you're Taino. I mean, I had a DNA test done. Sure, I know for sure I've got Taino blood, and the culture has pretty much been assimilated into like the Puerto Rican culture, like the foods that we eat, certain words in our vocabulary, certain practices, it's something that's very internal and integral to what it is to be Puerto Rican. You just know, like, oh, sí, eso es de lo indio. Like nobody even really says like, oh, la tribu Taino. That's something modern, something new that's been kind of like coming up because people are desiring to reconnect with their indigenous roots, but yeah, I mean, my abuela and abuelo, they'd always be like, oh, no, ese es muy indio, él parece de la India, like just very like casual, so, but it's just part of our culture, and then I always like, yeah, I've always had an interest, like the movie Dances with Wolves. I loved it when it came out, Dances with Wolves. I was like, oh, gracias. I was like totally obsessed with Dances with Wolves. And then that was like, my abuelo also would always take us to, there's a Shinnecock powwow in New York on Long Island. We would always go to the powwow and he loved it. And he just adored being in that indigeneity, in that like circle. And this has just been like a vein that's been following me throughout my life. You know what I mean? And now, I mean, like I said, I've been involved with Native Like Water. That was an opportunity that came to me, simply because I was watching like a Zoom meeting that was very interesting. It was about Indigenous youth and surfing, and that's how I got to know of that organization, and then ended up traveling with them, and learning more about my own indigeneity and being exposed to other tribes and practices and locales. Spent a lot of time in Mexico also, and now here I am in Costa Rica, and my partner is a native Criollo Guanacasteco, and it's like that's how it is. It's around me.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. No, and it's like I remember at one point, I think my brother, because he was, he was like at one point he wanted to be a history teacher or whatever, right? Or professor. But like he said at one point, like the Tainos, like how they were trying to say no, that bloodline had been eradicated, it didn't exist no more.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Then, yeah, and then there was, I guess once they did, I don't know, back then, and this was like, probably before everyone started getting all the DNA tests and all this and that, the genealogy and all that. But I guess when they did the studies, they showed that the Taino blood was like kind of even stronger than that, the, I don't know, colonized blood or whatever. And it survived, right? So as much as they were like, no, we, bred it out or whatever, like, no, the Taino blood survived. So I was like, oh
yeah.
Yeah. So that's very, I remember when we were in, I don't know, you heard of Standing Rock when Standing Rock took place? Yeah. So I remember like we were up there, and there was a guy like he identified as Taino, right? Like but I don't know how he got the nickname Puerto Rico, but that's what we called him, like Puerto Rico, hey, where's Puerto Rico? But it was beautiful, like to see that, like that's what called him over there, right? It was just the biggest gathering of indigenous peoples from everywhere, right? So it was like the most beautiful experience. And him, like he went because it was like if that, like his Taino blood, like his that indigenous blood pulled him over there, right? So yeah, and he was from New York too, I believe. So
yeah, that was like the diaspora. The diaspora ended up New York, like all the east coast of the United States, from New York to Florida. A lot of Puerto Ricans actually ended up going to Hawaii to work. Yeah, quite the diaspora. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, it's very prevalent, and a lot of it is matrilineal because, of course, the Spanish did take Taino wives or partners or raped them or whatever. So, that's just the unfortunate reality of it. But in a sense, it's like you tried to wipe us out, tried to eradicate us, but you actually just bred us more, and it's like, here we are, we're still here. And it's a shame that, the tribe is not federally recognized. But then again, it's like, look at Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was like a modern day colony, basically. It's like not here or there, not a state, not a country. It's,
Absolutely. No, thank you so much. So no, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. I don't want to keep you any longer. I wanted to talk a little bit about the tarot thing, but maybe we could do another interview one day, and even when you're settled, like do a reading and everything, all that.
Oh, I would love to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's beautiful. I wanted to ask you obviously more about like the whole living in Costa Rica and all that, because it's something that fascinates me. Like I definitely would love to move abroad, right? Like one day. So hopefully soon. But thank you so much. Unless there's anything else you want to add, I'll put your information too. You said your jewelry shop is gonna open and the readings are gonna open within a month or so, or?
Yeah, the readings, I'll probably open that up a bit sooner, but the jewelry, I have to kind of figure out how I would do envíos from here. You know what I mean? Because I'm not based in the United States anymore, and Etsy is based in the United States. So I kind of would have to figure out how to work that. And I'm not sure if I would be able to, but I can still do my tarot readings via Etsy. So that I'll be opening up soon. So definitely we could put that info in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do that then. No, thank you so much for taking the time. It's beautiful. Well, it's beautiful, right? That we could connect. That's one thing I love about, modern times, is the fact that we could connect with anyone in the world. It
is great. It's awesome.
Yeah. So that's a beautiful thing. So thank you so much once again. And yeah, on that note, anything you want to say, or
If you ever want a surf lesson in Costa Rica, come to a New Day Surf School.
absolutely
Little
no,
tiny plug. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. It's my principal, thing. But I do want to reintegrate my tarot cards. So that is definitely something that I'm missing a lot. And this interview, if anything, has motivated me to get myself together and organized and get back on the ball and break out my cards, because I probably could have avoided a lot of car trouble if I just asked the cards.
Yeah, probably. That's fine.
Yeah.
No,
So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
no, thank you. And on that note, yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do it again.
All right. Sounds good. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes you just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You just feeling it. And I want to feel this way forever.